Week one, a little crazy for survivor pools. If you survived, congratulations. We're going to take a look at week two, Survivor NFL, scratching and surviving. All right, guys, welcome back to Scratching and Surviving, where you get some of the most in-depth analysis on survivor pools that you're going to find anywhere on the internet. Week one, crazy week. We lost almost 40% of entries in week one over at Circa. I was able to survive with Seattle. Wound up being a fairly no-sweat type of a game with Seattle. But the big one, Cincinnati, about 35% of people in that pool and across pools overall had Cincinnati. They were eliminated, losing in just, they looked awful to the New England Patriots. And then we had a couple of other small ones kind of knock some people out as well. Atlanta was one of those teams that knocked a few people out. Some people even took the Giants, and, you know, kind of a crazy pick, in my opinion. There were some other dogs. About 45 people actually in Circa did not pick at all, so thank you for that 4,500 in the pot. We are down to about 8,000, I believe, people, so still a long way to go in Circa. We've got a long way to go in your pools probably as well. Let's jump into Survivor Week 2 in the NFL. I've got the Survivor Grid up. As you guys know, I always put up Survivor Grid. We take a look at that, and let's look at what we've got going on for Week 2. Baltimore is the biggest favorite on the board, 10-point favorite, about a 79% chance to win. Of course, I'm going to get a little bit more accurate win percentage when we look over at my spreadsheet. We'll get to that in a bit. But Baltimore is getting the most pick percentage as the highest spread team or the highest win percentage probability team. And if you don't know how to calculate your own implied odds or win probability, and when I do my spreadsheet, I'm looking at VIGless odds. If you don't know what the VIGless odds are or implied probability, download the Sharp app, join our Discord. I've got a whole educational channel in the Discord, totally free. Also, here on YouTube, if you look up the Sharp Academy videos, I've got a ton of videos that are going to help you with sports betting. Implied probability is one of those videos, so check it out. The second choice, at least from a pick percentage standpoint, that's the Chargers. Chargers are going to be ahead of some of these other teams because of the lack of future value that we're seeing on the Chargers. We've got Houston getting the third most picks right now. Again, Houston, slightly better chance of winning here than the Chargers, but the market really perceiving them to have more future value than they do, and we're going to go over that in a second. Philly, Dallas, Detroit, all really close. Detroit actually close to 74%. They've got the second most win percentage or second highest win percentage of the week, but a rather high future value. And we'll see in weeks that are not too far out here. You've got like Seattle at home against Seattle. That's another week where we may be able to take them. But let's start with Baltimore. We'll start up top and we'll work our way down. Baltimore, like I said, looks like about 9.5, 10-point favorite here to Vegas. Biggest favorite on the board, so they are getting the most picks. Now, when you look at Baltimore, not going to take them here for the next 3 weeks. Week 6 against Washington looks like an opportunity to take them as well. And as a matter of fact, when we sort it, at least on the look ahead for Week 6, they're going to be the most the biggest favorite here for Week 6. I don't see San Francisco being a higher favorite. Cincinnati, who knows at this point? We'll see how they look in the next few weeks. Green Bay home to Arizona. We'll check on that Love injury, but even if Love's in there, I don't think they're going to be a bigger favorite. So we're really not going to have anyone a bigger favorite than Baltimore in Week 6. So that's a reason. I don't like to look too far out, but when we have all these options available to us, that's definitely a reason to shy off in a mid-sized pool or even a small pool. Typically, I like to just take the team that I think has the highest probability of winning in a small pool, unless I was in a pool of less than 10 people or something like that. I think there might be better options this week, and we'll go through that. But then they've got Denver in Week 9. So you've got some options here where I think they're going to be quite a big favorite. Baltimore is a team that a lot of people may want to hold on to. We go back to this week. Let's actually sort it by the pick percentage. The Chargers, now here's a team. The reason they're getting 23% of the picks right now, they're at Carolina. One thing I think a lot of people are going to be taking against Carolina, they looked awful last week against New Orleans. Bryce Young did not look good. I was expecting Bryce Young to kind of take a step forward. It's week 1, so we don't want to get too crazy about it. But against a good Saints defense, so let's take that into account as well, they did not look great. But you got the Chargers going across the country at Carolina, 6.5-point favorites. Again, I don't get too caught up in road games. West Coast going to the East Coast. The line really is going to make that. The line's going to make that determination. Now, when you've got a situation where you say, well, I'm kind of torn between two teams. If you want to use that as a tiebreaker, by all means, go ahead and do it. But I really look at the line. I'm looking at the money line in particular and getting my win percentage there, and that's how I'm going to make my decision. But we see the Chargers getting quite a bit. And when you look at the EV, under 1, that always means it's a negative EV play. These plays over 1, at least according to Survivor Grid, you're getting plus EV. But this is not taking in future value, so keep that in mind. So with the Chargers here, a lot of people on them. You can see they're not going to be a big favorite in the foreseeable future. This is going to be the biggest chance or the best chance you have to take the Chargers. That's why a lot of people are jumping on the Chargers this week. Now, Houston, I feel like Houston's in a similar situation than the Chargers, but more people are going to take the Chargers because of the perception Houston was a playoff team. We'll have more opportunities. They're a better team. We have about the same probability of winning on the Chargers, so why not just take Houston, or why not take the Chargers here when we're not going to take them again? But you are getting a really nice leverage spot, I think, with Houston at a higher win percentage slightly against Chicago. They're at home. And when you really look at their schedule, while they're going to be favored in a lot of these games, they're not going to be a big favorite. It won't be a huge favorite here at Minnesota. They're going to be home against Jacksonville. Right now they have them as a favorite. I don't even know if they're going to be a 3.5-point favorite in that game. We'll see how Jacksonville performs in the next couple of weeks, and, of course, how Houston performs. Home against Buffalo, we're probably not going to want them there. At New England, I mean, look, New England looked, I guess, okay here in week 1. They won the game. We'll see what it looks like in week 6. But Houston on the road, are they going to be a touchdown favorite or more in New England? Probably not. At Green Bay, we're going to assume Love is healthy by then. That's not going to be a spot we want them. Home against Indianapolis, maybe not. So there's a long time here. At the Jets, Detroit, at Dallas, and then there's some picks here that are off the screen. Tennessee, you've got they're home for Tennessee, so that might be a shot. But that's week 12. So really there's not too many opportunities that you're going to want to take Houston, although they're going to be favored in a lot of games. So I'm kind of leaning towards Houston. I don't want to kind of give it away here before the end of the show, but the Houston looks really strong to me from a leverage standpoint. They've got a pretty high probability to win. That's where I'm leaning here in Circa, and I'll monitor it, and as you guys should as well, because these things are going to change. Like last week when I was initially doing the video, I do it early in the week. Cincinnati was a larger favorite than they wound up closing at. So you have to really monitor the line. That's going to change things. That's why the pick percentage also came down on Cincinnati. So really monitor Survivor Grid, see how these pick percentages fluctuate, and see how the lines fluctuate. That's going to change perhaps who we're taking, especially in a week like this where we've got a lot of teams here really close. You've got Detroit, Dallas, Philadelphia, Houston, the Chargers, all in that kind of 72-ish, 73% range as far as win probability. So we'll see if any of these lines really move drastically one way or another. There's an injury that we don't know about. We get another CMC type of situation where an injury comes up. Although, as a side note, CMC, best running back in football, he is a last-minute scratch in that game. The point spread moved a half a point. So understand, guys, you guys ask me a lot these questions all the time. And if this was something that we knew about CMC and they were playing someone where San Francisco was going to be a big survivor pick, they weren't really last week. But people would be asking me all the time, do you still like San Francisco without CMC in there? Look at the point spread, right? That's all I really care about. The point spread is going to determine how big of a factor that injury is. Typically, the quarterback's going to play the biggest role and the biggest factor in these point spreads. You had the best running back in the league. He was worth a half a point. I actually had a bet on San Francisco, and that won pretty easily. And, of course, people in our Discord over at the Sharp app want to know why I still liked the 49ers without CMC. And without getting into the whole analysis, that obviously was a smart decision, and those who tallied did well. So, again, monitor the point spreads, monitor the lines, and monitor Survivor Grid, because some of the information I give you now may change by the time Sunday comes. And also, leave your comments. You guys are always good about that, but leave your comments down below. Ask me the questions on your particular pool. Give me the rules that are pertinent so that I can really have a good understanding of what your rules are, what we need to be doing and looking at in your particular pool, because I'm going to tell someone, and you'll look at the comments. I'll tell someone that Houston's the right pick. It might not be pertinent this week because I think Houston's going to be a good pick in a lot of different pools as of right now. But I may give Baltimore to somebody and give Houston to someone else because it's really going to be dependent on your type of pool. For instance, circa, we have to pick all the games on Thursday of Thanksgiving. Not all the games, but we need to pick one pick from the Thursday and Black Friday game that is this week. So there's 4 that week. There's 4 games that week, and we need to choose that as if it was its own week unto itself. Also, Christmas, same situation. So it's sort of a 20-week season with a couple of those weeks being a very short number of games to choose from, making it all the more difficult, of course, to survive the whole way and win that $14+ million pot. So every pool is going to have its own nuances. You're going to have weeks where you have double picks, and we're going to need to know when those weeks are and look ahead to those weeks. But you'll ask me down in the comments. You guys are great about that, and we'll go from there. So we've gone over here Survivor Grid a little bit. Let's jump into the spreadsheet and see what we've got going on for this week on the spreadsheet. I've got it set at 0% as I usually do to start it off with you guys. And of course, it's going to give me the top 2 favorites on the board, which right now that's Baltimore and Detroit. Detroit, pretty, decent future value, not as much future value as Baltimore, but decent future value. We kind of went over that. They've got games here where you're going to be able to take them in the future. But, of course, at the 0% weighted future value, we're not too worried about, or we're not worried at all about future value. Very few pools you're going to be weighting this at 0, okay? So we jump it up to 25%. Let's say you have kind of a medium-sized pool. Maybe you've got 30, 40 entries, something like that, where you're going to still maybe not go too chalky and maybe take a pick out of that's not being taken by as many people. We're going to have to take a little bit more risk. The larger the pool, the greater the risk we need to take. That's a good lesson, by the way, in any sort of risk-taking, gambling. The greater the risk or the greater the reward here, with the least amount of probability it is of hitting that, whatever it may be, you've got to take more risk. Right? So if you're in a situation like a pool like this or the Circa, where the probability of winning is just not very good, right? You're going to have to survive 20 weeks, more than likely. What we're trying to do is increase our equity as quickly as we possibly can to hopefully capitalize on some hedge opportunities. Now, when I say equity, this is actually something I did want to get into briefly. You're going to hear me talk about equity quite a bit. Now, we lost about 40% of the entries in Circa, and probably in your pool too, probably around that 40% number. Let's make it easy, and let's just say we had 1,000 entries, and you're in a $100 pool with 1,000 entries. So you've got a $100,000 pot to try to win, right? So we've got $100,000 in the pot. You've got 1,000 entries. Let's say we lost 50% of those entries this week. We've now got 500 entries at a $100,000 pot. So what does that come out to? That's now worth each one of those entries is now worth $200 if we were looking at them in a vacuum. Meaning, if I just came along and you were in that particular pool and you said, you know what, I don't want to play the rest of the year, would you buy my entry? A fair value, assuming that you had you had a pick that was kind of a normal pick here, would be about $200. Now, let's say you went and took Minnesota in that pool. Well, you'd want more than $200 from me. You'd have more equity because you have a team that really is not very good that won last week. So you would have a much more valuable, maybe not much more, but you'd have a more valuable entry than, say, someone who took the 49ers last week. So you took one of the best teams in the league. You now don't have them as an available pick. Your entry, I would not pay you $200 for because I'm going to want to save the San Francisco for the future, right? I'd much rather, of the two, have the entry that took the Vikings, right? So that should make some sense to you, just think about it in that way. And after 1 week, not as significant. As we move on in the pool, this is going to become more significant. So that's why we're by taking, not necessarily taking the largest favorite every week. Like if you took a Baltimore this week, it's not going to increase your equity nearly as much when they win as, let's say, if you took a team. There's not too many bad teams that are favored this week, but let's say you took Washington against the Giants, right? And Washington wins that game. That would be a case if you had Washington and Minnesota as both winners, and you couldn't take them anymore. That's almost like not having taken any picks after the first 2 weeks, and then increasing your equity at a minimum, the amount that people have been knocked out of your pool, plus there's going to be some sort of a premium on top of that, right? So hopefully that makes sense when I talk about equity in the pool, and that's really why we're looking to, in larger pools, build our equity as much as we can, because based on that equity, that's going to be how we're going to be determining how much we're going to hedge. Can't even discuss hedging at this point, way too early in the season, but just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so at 25%, you see Houston now becomes a possible option. They have much less future value. I think people are a little, again, we went over it on the Survivor Grid. I think people are giving a little bit more future value to Houston than they really have. You look at the Chargers, they have not too much worse a future value at a less probability of winning, right? But when we bump this up to, let's say, 100%, which is what I look at in Circa, I look at the 100%. Now we're looking at Houston and the Chargers being a lot, they're actually even at this level because of this future value. And this makes total sense to me. I think the Chargers are more viable in a bubble at, in Survivor because of the lack of future value. But the fact that they're being taken 20.7% of the time is concerning. Actually, this number is higher now. When I did this, it was 20.7. As we saw on Survivor Grid, it's up to 23%, I believe, now. So this number is actually going to change. It's going to be a little bit higher, which is actually going to knock this number down. If I actually just put in the 23.3, it knocks this number down. Now let's talk about what this number is. This is the threshold, and it's going to come into play, I think, deeper into the season. The first year I have this column, but this is going to give us an idea of, without taking future value into account, just how strong a favorite a team needs to be, or what win percentage a team needs to be in order to fade the team in question. So in this case, Baltimore, without taking future value into account, you'd want to pick a team that was 74% or better in order to be a good fade, assuming that we had 32.4% of the picks on Baltimore. Now, when you take into account the future value is being fairly good, and guys, if you're new to this, the lower this number is, the better the future value. This is based on the rank in each week of what we're projecting the point spread to be. So the lower the number, if you're the number one team projected, like Baltimore's the number one team this week, they get a 1, and then we sum all that up, right? So you're going to see San Francisco and Kansas City have the lowest numbers because they are probably the two best teams in football, at least perception-wise. Baltimore is going to be right there with them. They're the third choice here as far as future value. So when we look at the future value and then add that in, we'd probably want to take a team. We'd probably be willing to take teams that are even lower than 74%, right? So you're going to have to gauge that for yourself depending on the size of the pool. Similar situation here with Detroit. We're looking to only fade them for teams over 74%, but we've really got to have a reason, and we've got to have a team with lower future value. And we've got that with Houston and the Chargers here. A flat fade of Houston, you'd want to have 72%, but that number is actually going to drop because of the fact that they've got good future value, and also because the pick percentage is so low. And again, my pick percentage is going to be off because I did this last night, and then these numbers have, of course, updated. But we're in the ballpark here. Let's just update the big ones for us. 32.2. We're in the same spot pretty much. This is the one that's increased a little bit. Just going to kind of glance over. Houston's at 9.4. So let's just update that. 9.4%, not changing a whole lot, right? So these thresholds, what we're going to see is later in the year when there's not that many options and you're in a pool where maybe there's only 5-6 people left, this number is going to become huge. Because if everyone could get on one side, if let's take, for example, Baltimore was available in your pool and there's only 4 people left in your pool, all 4 of you could take Baltimore, and you thought that all 4 were going to take Baltimore, right? So we would say, including yourself, 75% of the pool was taking Baltimore. Well, now you really just need to take any other favorite to have a huge amount of leverage in the pool, right? So you see how this is going to work, and it's going to play out better come the end of the year. But this is what we're looking at here for this week. With the 100%, I think Houston, if they remain at a fairly low ownership here, looks like a really strong play to me. I get the Chargers play, but I'm going to take a chance here that, with a team that has a higher probability of winning as of right now, Probably the better team. I think, no doubt, the better team. Playing, of course, the Bears, who did not look great last week, but the defense played well, really won the game for them. Are the Bears going to be able to hang with Houston? I don't try to do too much of an analysis on here. I'm just looking at that win probability. Having the higher win probability, slightly lower future value, but the fact that the win percentage for them, or the pick percentage, is so much lower. It's more than double, or greater than half. Or how would that go? Let's go the easy way. Let's just say the Chargers are more than double the pick percentage of Houston, right? It just makes Houston look like a really strong play. I have no problem if you take Baltimore, especially in smaller pools. In a larger pool, I just don't see Baltimore as being the best option this week. And I just think we're going to have more chances on Detroit, Philly, and Dallas. I think really in large pools, your options are going to be between the Chargers and Houston, and being the fact that we've got such a disparity here in pick percentage, I like Houston. Of course, that's early in the week. That's what I'm looking at right now. Things may change as they do in the NFL. I'm always curious to hear your guys' opinion. Leave a comment down below. Let me know which way you guys are looking this week, and we'll discuss it in the comments. Good luck this week. We'll be back next week, hopefully with you surviving on Scratching and Surviving.